Now, son, I've told you about what you need to do.
Yes, Dad.
Back when, in my day, when we were kids, you go date a girl and you wouldn't wear anything nasty. These girls nowadays, things are up here, they're loose. They don't even wear a bonnet. They don't cover their hair. What kind of craziness are you doing, man?
I know.
Watch yourself out there. She wants you because you have a fancy car.
I won't touch any of them.
She wants you because your daddy got a little money, and I've
Yes, Dad.
been taking care of you. And I want you to be like me when you grow up, not like these hip cats or whatever you call them. You understand me?
Yes, Dad.
So don't go out there doing anything nasty. When you borrow the car, don't touch on her. None of that stuff.
Don't worry about your car. None of them get in there. I'll find me a good tomato and we'll be fine. Ripe as can be. Okay, Pappy?
Do you get it? All right, son, I'll talk to you later.
The drift into the 1920s revolutionized the aspects of social interactions.
Father was a bootlegger. He was a criminal. Also live music. She always remembers there being live music. She had a lot of musicians. There was a lot of grass. She remembers them smoking grass at her house. My grandparents lived in sin. My grandmother was still married to somebody else when she and my grandfather were living together. Their first child was born when she was still married to somebody else. It was a different, that wasn't the normal thing. That wasn't the way people behaved, I don't think. That was just the way my family behaved. So it was after the war. Radio was a big deal.
The radio. The first means use of the radio came during World War I. It was used to communicate with troops out in the battlefield and between countries. Since it was a new technology, it would provide means for secretive talking amongst countries. The radio first became public in 1921 with the use of Graham McNee, which was an American pioneer for the radios, which was recognized for his popularity in sports and radio comedy. Then came in Charles Correll, which was famous for his works in the Amos and Andy Show with Freeman S. Gosson. Along with him came Al Johnson, the star from the first sound film of the Warner Brothers, the jazz singer, which brought new generations to films such as musical gangster films, and Screwball.
Women's skirts, I was watching a program this morning, all of a sudden women were like, oh, I can show my legs.
As you can see, the 1920s proved to be more provocative into the flapper stage of women's society.
My grandmother knew how to drive. My grandmother had a boat tail Auburn. Women didn't drive. She drank. I remember that. She put her liquor, my mother told me this, she put her liquor in the back of the toilet. You know, in the toilet tank, and she'd lift off the lid, and I guess that's where she hid her liquor, because it wasn't quite okay for her to drink. She smoked. And I guess that was all due to the way things changed. But now my other grandmother, who lived in Oklahoma and was born before it was the United States, wasn't like that at all.
The women portrayed in this picture was pre-1920s when they were dressed up and covered clothing and wouldn't show much of their bodies.
Still wore really long clothes. I mean, my other grandma wore short skirts. And Grandma Annie, hers were down to her knees still. She got dressed in a closet. Her husband, as long as they were married, never saw her without her clothes on. She got dressed and undressed in a closet. So it didn't hit them in the old rural area. And they were like that till they died. It was bizarre. It was a very different group of people.
The sports. George Herman Ruth, known to the world as Babe Ruth, was the star of baseball and known for his enormous appetite for food, booze, and women. Holding the record for the most home runs at the time, winning 4 World Series, brought fans to the edge of their seats with every ballgame. The nickname for the Yankee Stadium is still known today as the house that Babe built. Another sports superstar of the 1920s was Jack Dempsey, known as the greatest boxer of the 1920s. And after an absence from boxing and the end of the Great Depression, Dempsey returned to the ring to carry the boxing franchise to its feet and winning the World Heavyweight Championship, captivating many audiences over the world.
One from a big city, Chicago, Detroit, and then the other one's from Heavener, Oklahoma. You probably can't even find it on a map. I think there's only 400 people there. Oh, movies. So people were seeing things.
Film stars were so idolized they influenced and reflected cultural change in the 20s. The transition from silent films into talkies captivated audiences. Film stars such as Clara Bow.
Clara Bow is the first natural sex symbol. A woman who doesn't have to work at it. She just has to enjoy it. Producer B.P. Schulberg bills her as the hottest jazz baby in films.
She was really the personification of Elvis Cupper's Fitzgerald jazz baby at the time of changing, and she was a perfect vehicle for it.
Portrayed the epitome of a flapper. Also, the antics of Charlie Chaplin gave the insight of intermingling classes, which would lead to the wild antics. Here are the top 14 films of the 1920s. As you may see, the first talkie film, which was The Jazz Singer, is at number 12. How did the arts change sexual standards? The innovation of radio brought silent films closer to the possibility of having film with dialogue. Once films were able to have sound, women started to look up to film stars, such as natural sex symbol Clara Bow. Many young women started to embrace their bodies by wearing provocative clothing, known as flappers. Once that took place, the terms of cake eater and bear cats were highly known. Famous silent film actor Charlie Chaplin brought up the idea of classes intermingling due to sexual contact as well as music.